Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of You and My Boro with myself, Scott Wilson, and Dom Shaw, both from the Northern Echo. We're going to chat Boro. We're going to talk through kind of what's happening in and around the club, what's going on. You well, Dom?
Sound mate, yeah, yourself?
Yeah, I'm good.
Recovered from that grim final last night. God, that was a hard watch, wasn't it?
Spurs and Man United. Yes, it wasn't exactly free-flowing European football at its best, was it? But at least it was football, because from a Boro point of view, it feels like we're in the real dead period before transfers crank up, pre-season cranks up. This is the dead region, isn't it? But I mean, we're calling it the dead region. Michael Carrick's future. What's happening with Boro? I mean, let's start off with that, because clearly everything else really that stems from the summer is going to revolve around that. I mean, it has gone quiet. There's no denying that. In some respects, I think we're both kind of just waiting as much as everybody else for what's going on. What's your reading of it at the minute, Dom, in terms of what's happened since the end of the season and where we might be at with Michael Carrick and his future?
Well, it feels like an eternity, doesn't it? And I think that's because nothing's happened, really.
Yeah.
Nothing's happened. Not just regarding that, but anything really coming out of Boro, other than the retained list at the back end last week, which we'll get to. But the indications we got in the days that followed the final day at Coventry were that we won't be rushed into a decision. We're not going to be rushed into a decision. We're going to let things settle. We won't panic and jump straight into the back of something on the back of the season. And we want to carry out an in-depth, detailed review of everything surrounding everything that we can and everything that might have contributed to the failings of this season. So with that in mind, it's no real surprise that things have taken a little while. But I think the fact that we haven't heard anything suggests that there's still no obvious conclusion. Because if the conclusion was that Michael Carrick is going to move on and Boro are going to be searching for a new manager, well, obviously that there's a statement or however it comes out and Boro crack on. But if he's going to stay, then I don't know how Boro will do it, but I think it will benefit everyone to get that message out somehow, whether that's on the record or off the record. That would benefit everyone to get that message out there, because only then, I think, can you draw a line under last season, the disappointment of last season. And as we said in the recent vid, I don't know if it was last week's or the weeks before, I think what's crucially important, and this is absolutely the case from the conversations I've had since the end of the season, no matter what the outcome is of the review, last season wasn't accepted. The minimum expectation was sixth. They will not accept last season as just a missed opportunity. But if we had X or Y fit in the second half of the season, we'd make the top six. There are clearly issues there that need to be ironed out, more than one issue. And I think that's why there's this detailed, in-depth review taking place now to try to get to the bottom of that and to try to determine what the best course of action is moving forward. I think in previous windows, previous summers, Januaries, Kieran Scott's been great at going on the record, hasn't he, and sitting down with us, going on BBC Tees and talking in depth to Mark Drury. I would fully expect Kieran to do that this summer. I think I would expect he'd want to do that. I think everyone would benefit from him doing that. But I don't think he can do it now. I don't think he'd be in a position to be able to do it now. I think, first of all, decisions need to be made on what's going forward. Then you do it, don't you? And explain why we've made this decision, what we've learned from last season, what we want to build moving forward. Then I think is the time to do it. The question is, and you watching know as much as we do on this, when will that be?
Yeah. So two things off the back of that, I think. One, I think there's, it's an easy feeling to have that the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that Michael Carrick stays as head coach. There was a feeling initially that if he was going to go, it was probably going to be pretty quickly off the back of the last day of the season, clean break, get it over with. That hasn't happened. But the fact that Boro are adamant that they're going to do this properly, they're going to have this thorough review, they're going to look at everything, and they're going to assess where the failings lay. I don't think we're in a position yet. Well, we're not, are we? Where we can categorically state that Michael Carrick will still be the head coach next season. It feels like the balance is with every day that passes tilting more that way, but I don't think we're there yet. The second point is, if Michael Carrick does stay as head coach, then everything you've said there and everything that I'm hearing from kind of senior figures in and around the club as well suggests that it won't just be a case of business as usual. You know, just because the head coach might stay in position, it doesn't mean that there might not be changes to the coaching staff. They might look at the way medical works and you know, training and player recovery, which has clearly been a massive issue this season. Recruitment might well need a tweak. You know, I don't think we're going to be in a position where, okay, Michael Carrick stays, it's business as usual, we'll just get on with it. Hopefully we're a bit better this season than we were last. I don't think there's a move for that, is there? No,
absolutely not. And you started listing off the things there that I was going to, because if Carrick was to stay, there needs to be, I think, a structure in place from him or an admission that certain elements need to be addressed or improved. So,
yeah.
And this clearly, I'm not saying is purely on the coaching staff or any staff, but the injury record. I don't think you can say it's coincidental that you've had 2 years. And this is coming from someone clearly, like, it is, you can't make accusations when you're not on the training ground every day. You can only go with the evidence that's presented. But the injury record of the last 2 years suggests that something different needs to be tried there. So, for example, 2 years ago, or the season before this one, Newcastle United's injury record was wretched. Last summer, they brought in, was it James Bunce, who was like a performance
director.
To address that. This year, it's been a lot better. Now, I'm not saying one man makes all the difference, but clearly that was an area that they felt, not they didn't need to rip it up and start again, but they just needed to tweak certain things that they do to hopefully improve the injury record. This year, it's worked. Now, clearly, Newcastle haven't been playing European football this season, which obviously helps. But that's something that I think has to be addressed. The coaching question, last year, Boro lost a coach who was gone on to be first-team coach of Bayern Munich, who've just won the Bundesliga, and replaced him with, as you pointed out a couple of weeks ago, someone who was working in a youth setup, an academy setup at a Premier League club. That Graham Carrick might well be a hugely impressive coach on the training field, but is there enough experience there? Are you missing a certain type of voice? Again, I'm not saying yes or no either way, but that's the type of thing that you would think will be addressed. Do you need sometimes I think it's not just about experience, it's about a fresh voice, isn't it? It's about a different voice on the training pitch. How many different assistants did Alex Ferguson have at Man United during his time? It just brings a fresh voice to things, doesn't it? So there's that. Then there's the style of play. Now, again, if Carrick was to stay, he's not going to rip things up and start again. But does there have to be an acceptance on the back of this season that the approach wasn't working? Boro were far too predictable.
Yeah.
Opposition managers said it without saying it on enough occasions this season, didn't they?
Yeah. Some actually said it.
Yeah, complimentary of how well set up, how well structured they were, and the style of play they want to play. But too many managers, on the evidence of what we saw, found it too easy to stop Boro. And then the other thing, which we've talked about again, is the recruitment. I think in January, Boro went away from what had been hugely successful in recent windows from recruitment. I know I'm like a stuck record with this. I think last summer's window was as impressive as Boro have had in a long time. And this season, the disappointment of this season has done nothing to change my mind on that. Aidan Morris, top target, really impressive. Tommy Conway, top target, really impressive. Both signed as early as possible. Ben Doak, wanted by every championship club, came to Boro and was one of the best players in the championship in the first half of the season. In January, Ryan Giles, different type of signing. All the hints were there that he shouldn't re-sign. They shouldn't look to sign him again. Ended up a disaster. Kelechi Iheanacho, a disaster. George Edmondson has impressed or had done his job as a loan signing, but obviously injuries disrupted the second half of his season. I think Boro have had more hits than misses when it comes to recruitment in the last few years. Boro are on to something good with recruitment. stick with that. Dive into that and go strong with that.
So let's go with recruitment then. You touched on it earlier. The one thing that has happened since the end of the season was the retained list. Obviously, the two headlines within that, Dijksteel and Johnny Howson. So let's start with Dijksteel. No real surprise, is there, that that's the end of the road for Anthony Dijksteel?
No, I'm sure we probably did have this conversation a year ago when we were talking about potential ins and outs of Boro, and I'm sure we'd have said a year ago that we expected Anthony Dijksteel to leave last summer. He'd been a bit part player for 18 months or so under Carrick, hadn't he? Luke Ayling had come in the second half of that season, really impressed, nailed down the right back spot. He was going to be the starting player at right back, and Dijksteel looked set to be a fringe player. Well, he's actually played an awful lot more football than anyone, including him, I can imagine, would have envisaged this season. And it's a good job, really. Boro kept him. Had he gone, he'd have been replaced, so Boro wouldn't have left themselves short. But I thought he was sound for most parts of the season. Had his bad games, had his good games, but I thought over the course of the season, he was 6.5, 7. That said, he's 28. If you were going to offer him a new deal at 28, you can't give him a year. This isn't a 34-year-old where we're saying, can we give him an extra year as cover? It would have had to have been a relatively long-term deal. I think the harsh reality is, if you want to win promotion to the Premier League, right back was one of the areas in the squad where you'd looked, and Boro needed an upgrade. Dijksteel has been sound, but I think Boro need an upgrade. Luke
Ayling, it's
going
to be a priority position this summer now, isn't it? It was going to be anyway, let's be honest, because Ayling obviously had his injury issues, and we're going to have to see what level Luke Ayling is coming back at when he comes back for pre-season and all that. But regardless of kind of where Ayling's at, Boro need a top championship right back, don't they?
Yeah, because Tommy Smith nailed down the place in Carrick's first 2/3 of the season, didn't he? Then got the injury. Then Luke Ayling was really good in the second half of last season, but obviously this season struggled to find that level of display again, and then gets the injury. We've talked again and again this season, haven't we, about a lack of steel, a lack of leadership, a lack of maybe character. Well, I don't think you can accuse Ayling of having any of the above. I think Ayling is a really pivotal figure in the dressing room. But that said, I still think you need an on-the-pitch upgrade at right back. And if you can bring in someone at right back and then have Ayling there as deputy. And Ayling's versatile, isn't he? Ayling can play at centre-half. Ayling has been there and done it. Ayling knows what it's all about. But yeah, I don't think there's any surprise there. And I don't think Dijksteel will find it particularly difficult to get a championship club. Do you? I think there's a certain type of championship club who will find Anthony Dijksteel an appealing signing.
Without any prior knowledge, it certainly feels like he could replace Duncan Watmore in the Middlesbrough retirement home at Millwall.
QPR, Preston have been linked as well. They all.
Yeah, I mean, that, as we've seen this season, if you're and this is harsh on Millwall because they weren't, to be fair, were they? They weren't a bottom half championship club, but it feels like exactly feels like that's their kind of level. If you're that level of club, then Anthony Dijksteel will do a job for you. I don't think we've seen that. Boro, as we know, as we've talked about, if you're genuinely targeting the top 6, you need to turn your sights a little bit higher. What about Johnny Howson then? That's TBA, isn't it, at the moment, which is interesting in itself, really. What's your reading of what's going on there?
Well, I was going to come back to you on that one, but you said with the Dijksteel one, no real surprise. Well, I don't think there's a surprise that there's an interest there in keeping Johnny Howson on for another year. I know I've said this before. When I spoke to Howson a few months ago, and the retirement question inevitably cropped up, for the first time, it was sat in a sit-down interview at Rockcliffe, and for the first time, I came away thinking, is it on his mind there? Just the way he responded to the question, what he said, what he didn't say, but the fact he was kind of fighting with himself, really, as to what to say. I remember there was a 10, 15-second pause before he answered the question. And at that stage, you wonder whether Howson was thinking, is my body up to it anymore? Well, that was before he comes in and plays the last however many games and was Boro's probably best player over the course of the last however many
The last
games.
month of the season, yeah.
A commentary on the final day. Yeah, he initially started playing at centre halves because Boro had no centre halves. But at Coventry on the final day, you had Dale Fry, George Edmondson, and Darrell Lenihan sat there on the bench. Or Johnny Howson was in the team on merit. And I think what we saw in the final weeks of the season, whether it's in midfield, whether it's at the back, whether it's as a starter or as a player who's going to play 19, 20 games this season, is there's no dispute that Johnny Howson still offers an awful lot at Boro.
So do you think this is a case of Boro making the offer and Howson basically saying, look, I want to have a think about this. I need to have a think about what my future actually is, where I see myself. And Boro, understandably saying, okay, go away, take whatever time you need. We're in no rush. Clearly pre-season still, a good month away, just over. And a decision will be made in that period. Is that your reading of it?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, he's been doing his coaching badges, isn't he? Is there a possibility that he could?
I mean, from a Boro point of view, you offer him a 1-year contract. You would imagine. I don't. I'll be absolutely honest. I don't know the intricacies of this, but you would imagine that every year he's had a new 1-year contract, it's been on broadly the same terms. I would imagine that Boro are offering broadly the same terms that they've offered him every time. So I would have thought from Boro's point of view, once you've made the decision, you've got an interest in keeping him. It's a pretty easy thing from that end of it. I suspect the uncertainty is at Howson's end, as you're saying. Do I want to commit to another year at Boro when A, I need to know my body's going to be up for it, and B, for all he's come in this last month of the season, had Fry, Vandenberg, Edmondson being fit all the way through and not had to drop out of the team at any stage, Johnny Howson probably ends this season having started 4, 5, 6 league games, doesn't he? You know what I mean? And that's the scenario we could have next season. We're talking about how valuable he is. Yes, he is. But without being in any way disparaging to Johnny Howson or what he can offer, if Johnny Howson starts 25 league games for Boro next season, something's gone wrong, hasn't it? Boro should not be in a situation where they're relying on Howson having to play that much football. They just shouldn't.
No, they shouldn't. So the flip side is last season, if he, and I know this is like a ridiculous argument in one sense, but what we never saw was Howson early in the season being able to get 6, 7. So had Howson got 6, 7, 8 games under his belt at the start of the season or at the midpoint of the season, like he did the end, would we have been talking now about Johnny Howson playing 20, 25 games this season?
Midfield.
Midfield or defence. I go back to what I said last year. I think if you didn't know Howson's age and just purely watched him on judged it on what you were watching, you wouldn't really see the signs that he's at the stage he's at. I mean, it was Luton away when he played at centre half. And, for a makeshift centre half, I know Luton went down, but that is probably the most bruising challenge you can get, isn't it? And he used every ounce of his experience to get through that game. And I think the other thing it goes back to is we've said it week after week after week. I saw Tony Pulis saying it this week. Boro lacks steel.
Yeah.
Johnny Howson has got steel. So
that's true. You can't deny that.
If you're already lacking steel in a dressing room, do you want to lose your club captain? Is there an acceptance of, and again, this is where we don't know how Howson's feeling. Like, Howson might be happy playing 15, 20 games, but also maybe playing more of a transition role in the dressing room of helping the younger players through, doing a bit more coaching, maybe coaching one of the younger groups. I don't know. This is all just guesswork.
And that's where I could see him being really valuable. And that's where I fully would back Boro in trying to keep him. I just, he's a really kind of proud, driven, passionate guy, isn't he, Johnny Howson? I wouldn't be surprised if in the back of his mind, he is at least to a slight degree thinking, how would I handle next season if I was playing a real bit part role and helping put out the cones every now and then and learning a bit of coaching, but actually not getting the adrenaline rush of playing much on a Saturday, not being an absolutely integral part of that first team. he might end up being. We'll see. That decision is clearly going to be
just
made.
one more on that. We've said it. You said it before the playoffs. I know the identity and the makeup of the squad is going to change, but as things stand now, and for the last however many months, we've both thought that it's well suited to a back three and wing backs. Well,
Yeah.
I think Howson would be. I think Howson would be maybe not week in week out.
Yeah.
But I think Howson perfectly suit playing on the right side of
a back three.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. Maybe that's something that is being spelled out to the head coach in this series of debriefs. Tactical switches.
It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks ahead.
Last season, isn't it? Really,
couple of weeks ahead, isn't it? I think.
No, it is.
In the next couple of weeks, you would think we'd get some clarity, wouldn't you? And it's going to be interesting.
The championship season then actually ends on Saturday, doesn't it? Sheffield United, Sunderland at Wembley. Obviously, we hoped Boro would have been part of that mix. They clearly are not. I think we've said before that it probably feels like Sheffield United going up would be better from a Boro point of view. I think so, because I just think, and I said it on a previous vid, that I think there's the potential for Sunderland squads being absolutely ripped apart if they don't get up, and there will be a question mark over how strong they might be as a championship club again next season. I think with Sheffield United, you probably know what you're going to get. They'll still be in the second season of parachute payments. Yes, they might lose Hamer. Yes, they might lose an odd player, but I don't see the heart being ripped out of that squad, and I see them having the ability to stock it up and go again.
Yeah, I just echo what you said there and what I've said in the last couple of videos. If Sunderland fail to win promotion, it feels hugely unlikely that they manage to keep hold of Joe Bellingham, doesn't it? For example, Bellingham will go. You would think if they don't go up, will Chris Rigg go? Will Dan Neil go? Will Dan Ballard go? Eliza Mayenda is now a Spain under-21 international. Now, clearly Sunderland, who sold Jack Clark last summer and didn't really make a significant signing last summer, although they've signed Wilson Isidore and made that deal permanent. And obviously there's the Enzo Lafay deal that could potentially be made permanent. There was those wages in January. But clearly Sunderland are not going to lose all of those players. But even losing two players of the quality of Bellingham or Rigg or Neil or Ballard is going to have an impact, isn't it? And it's also felt like things have come together nicely for Sunderland this season. Will that be the case again next year? Will LeBreeze have such an impact in the second season? Whereas Sheffield United, if they fail to go up, as you say, second year of parachute payments, Hamer's the one who you look at and think, yeah, they might lose him, but there's real depth there, isn't there? You only have to look at the players who were coming off the bench in the playoff games and think that they'd be better equipped to be stronger next season. I mean, from Boro's perspective, from the perspective of a Boro fan, you finished 10th in a season when the aim was to go up. You've seen Newcastle win at Wembley. You've seen Leeds win the championship title, and now there's the potential of seeing Sunderland win at Wembley. I think it all, on a serious note, I think it all adds to the frustration and the disgruntlement come the end of the season as to what could have been for Boro this season. At the start of the season, I was convinced that Boro would finish in the top six. I never really considered the possibility of them not finishing in the top six.
I think if,
throughout the campaign has undoubtedly added to the frustration of Boro supporters.
I think if you're a Boro fan on Saturday, you've either got 40,000 Sunderland fans going absolutely berserk at Wembley, or you've got a grinning Chris Wilder like a Cheshire cat
strutting around.
I think what you do is you put BBC One on and you hope the grandstand's got racing from Chepstow, a bit of show jumping, and you have a little nap in front of that, and just completely ignore this championship playoff final at Wembley, because whichever way it goes, it's not going to be very palatable from a Boro perspective, I don't think.
No, Chris Wilder will certainly enjoy that. I can already imagine the videos that will be doing the rounds on Saturday night if he's in the boozer singing along if Sheffield United win.
Well, we'll end with one other final, actually. One other little bit of news note. If you would add anything on your Boro bingo card for the season, Boro getting money through Jed Spence being a European champion would have been, well, where would that have been on the list?
Strange old season. And yeah,
Goodness
so
me.
Spurs.
What was that? The great Warnock, either a Champions League player or a National League player. Well, next season he's a Champions League player.
And Warnock will take full credit for that.
Oh,
sure.
he will. I always knew. He just needed that kick up the backside.
Yeah. I said to Jed. I pulled him to one side. And I said to Jed, so Spurs Champions League now, and from what we understand, that triggers, don't know how much, but that triggers another payment to Boro from the deal that obviously took him to Tottenham from Boro.
It's got to be said. It's got to be said to Boro, to be fair. The Jed Spence deal, the Morgan Rogers deal, which, I mean, if he moves this summer, goodness me, it'd be like Christmas and for the next 10 years rolled into one for Boro in terms of the cash that could bring them in with the sell-on clause they've got. I mean, it goes back to what you were saying about the recruitment model and the fact they moved away from it in January. For the long-term good of the club, what they were doing, bringing in a Spence, bringing in a Rodgers, if you get a couple of them right, and to be fair to Boro's recruitment team, they've got a fair number of them right. That's before we even add on the money that's coming for Latterlath. I mean, fair play to them. That has to be the way for a championship club without parachute payments to run and operate, hasn't it?
Yeah, and it's not a one-off, is it? Rogers, Lat. It will happen with Rav van den Berg, whether it's this summer, whether it's January, whether it's next summer. Rav van den Berg will go, and he'll go for an awful lot more money than what Boro paid for him. It's another one off the list. And I think on the subject of games to look out for this weekend, Villa and the Champions League race, because if Villa, all the suggestions are, all the noises we're hearing is that Villa might well find themselves in a position like Newcastle found themselves in last summer with PSR. Well, if Villa miss out on the Champions League this season, the pressure might well and truly be on there. And I'm sure there are players, obviously, they would rather sell than Rodgers. But selling a Rodgers gets rid of those two.
Might get them out of trouble,
straight away. And Chelsea are said to be interested. I mean, clearly it's a watch this space and nothing more than that from Boro's perspective at this minute. But there was what was described, there was a healthy sell-on fee, sell-on clause included there. So if Rodgers is to go this summer, then Boro cash in.
Well, after a fortnight where absolutely nothing's happened, we've managed to rabble on for nearly half an hour. So that's not bad, is it? That's not bad. Listen, thanks for watching. Stick with us. We will endeavour to bring you the news of anything that is happening at Boro, and things will clearly start happening soon this summer. So we are going to keep the weekly vids going. We will get some special guests. I know we keep on saying this. I promise you we will. We'll get some special guests on. We'll have a good chinwag with them and everything. But hopefully you enjoy us just rabbiting about all things Boro. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, like, subscribe, tap below, let us know your comments, let us know what you're thinking, anything you want us to talk about on future vids. We do read the comments. Whoever it was, I'm sorry, I haven't got the comments directly below us. Whoever it was that said they were going to listen to the 1 hour special on their walk through the Cleveland Hills, hope that went well. Hope we managed to keep you going there. If you listen on a podcast platform, then rate and review. Subscribe to us, our work on the Northern Echo. Keep an eye on the Echo website. Obviously, anything breaking, anything happening will be on there. But we'll be back next week for another edition of You Are My Boro.